Lord, I appear for the President, the first respondent. With me is Dr. Aziz Bamba Bassett.
Yes. May it please your lordships, James Kwashi Aiden for the second respondent. And with me are my learned friends Anthony Darby and Frida Bruce Appiah.
Yes. If it pleases your lordships, I appear for the third respondent, and with me my learned friend Samuel Kojo. Yes.
My Lord, I wish to make a comment. Throughout these proceedings, Counsel for First Respondent has constantly been announcing himself as appearing for the President. My Lord, we have not sued the First Respondent in his capacity as President. Indeed, the Constitution forbids that. We sued him because he is the winner of the elections in December, which we are challenging. I think the proper designation should be given as appearing for First Respondent and not for the President. My Lord, having said that as a preliminary remark, we wish to bring to the notice of the court that we were served with the second respondent's affidavit yesterday at 6:32 p.m. This morning in this court, we have been served with 80 affidavits sworn to on behalf of the first and third respondents. We do not know if those are all the affidavits that have been filed on behalf of the first and third respondents.
Well, the registrar will react to what you are saying because that's registry matters.
Mr. Addison, this morning we served your clerk, Stephen Yankee, with 139 affidavits filed by 139 out of 7,200 plus affidavits that in our registry that we are working on, we are sorting it out. So out of it that we serve you 139. 139. So you have received it. We gave it to Stephen Yankee this morning. Stephen Yankee. It's 139 affidavits. 139. 39. So
very well. Out of 7,000. We're not. My lords, be that as it may, we have had a look at these affidavits. We have 80 here. We have looked at them. They are all in the mode of the previous affidavits filed in support of the 320 people who sought to join earlier on. They are the same synchronized affidavits. The only changes on them are the names and addresses and the polling stations they purport to represent. So we are prepared to go on today.
My lords, respectfully, I do represent the President, and under Article 63(9), at the time he was sued, there was prima facie evidence that he had been elected as the President. And in fact, he has since been sworn in as the President of Ghana. And I believe I need not refer my learned friend to Article 64(2), which affirms his position as the President. So when I refer to the first respondent as the President, I do mean the President.
My Lord, we are ready to start. My Lord, with the leave of the court, if I may make some opening remarks before we put in our first witness.
I've agreed on expedition of this matter. I thought everybody is worried about expediting. So don't let us go to things that will hold down. It is the evidence that matters. Yes, addresses to will come.
I'm sorry, my Lord. I can go ahead.
Yes.
Very well, my Lord. I will call our first witness. fact, it's the petitioner himself, the second petitioner, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia.
Before you give evidence, you have to swear by one of these holy objects. You have the Bible, the cross, the Quran. On the other hand, you can affirm in a manner that binds on your conscience.
Yes.
Which of these would you like to? Please do stand up. Which of these would you like to?
My Lord, I'll swear by the Holy Quran.
After he has sworn. Yes, all witnesses will be out. Yes, that's what not. All witnesses, we should be out.
All witnesses out of sight, out of hearing. All witnesses in this case out of sight, out of hearing. Except the parties in this case.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, my Lord.
Yes.
Please raise it with your right hand. Except the petitioners in this case and the parties. Please raise it with your right hand. Please say after me. I, your full name,
Mahamudu Bawumia,
do swear by the Almighty Allah.
Do swear by the Almighty Allah
That the evidence
I shall give
before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help me Allah. Thank you. Lord, that's okay in English. Please take your seats. And you address the bench, my Lord.
Well, it would be nice if it was higher. Stand. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Yes. Dr. Bawumia, will you be comfortable standing or you like sitting down?
I'll probably be more comfortable standing. I reserve the right to sit down when I decide. Thank you.
Can you give your full name to the court?
My name is Mahamudu Bawumia.
Where do you live?
Kandare State, Accra.
What is your occupation?
I'm an economist.
Now, do you know the first petitioner in this matter?
Yes, I do. Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. He selected me as his running mate, and we ran on the same ticket as I ran as his vice presidential candidate in the December 2012 presidential election.
Do you know the third petitioner?
Yes, I do, my lord. Third petitioner is Jake Obechibi Lamte, the national chairman of the New Patriotic Party.
What about the first respondent? Do you know him?
Yes, I do. John Dramani Mahama, who stood on the ticket of the National Democratic President and was declared by the second respondent as duly elected and was sworn in as President of the Republic of Ghana.
Do you know the second respondent?
Yes, the second respondent, my lords, is the Electoral Commission. That is the body that is constitutionally mandated to carry out public elections in Ghana, including the presidential and parliamentary elections.
What about the third respondent? Do you by any chance know them?
The third respondent, my lords, is the National Democratic Congress, the party on whose ticket the first respondent stood as presidential candidate in the December 2012 elections.
Now, Dr. Bawumia, can you tell the court why you are in court this morning?
My lords, I am in court this morning on my own behalf and on behalf of my fellow petitioners to challenge the declaration of the second respondent for the results of the 2012 election. To challenge the declaration because the evidence that we have indicates that this declaration cannot be supported by the primary document governing this election.
May I ask for a little, if we are required to cross-examine soon after testimony without waiting for the transcripts, perhaps it has to be a little more deliberate, so we could take as copious notes as we can, so we don't have to wait for transcripts.
Yeah, cross-examination will be spontaneous. I mean, immediately. Yeah, we understand. So you moderate it for them to capture. Yeah. Yes.
Now, can you tell the court why you're testifying on behalf of the petitioners?
Yes, my lords. I'm one of the petitioners, the second petitioner. Following the elections of December 2012, the first petitioner appointed me to head a committee to investigate the numerous reports of constitutional and statutory violations, irregularities, and malpractices that came to us from our agents all over the country. As head of this committee, we received Thank you, my Lord. As head of the committee that was set up by the first petitioner, we received thousands of statement of poll and declaration of results forms. These statement of polls and declaration of results for the office of president forms are also known as the pink sheets, my Lord. In examining these pink sheets, we found numerous constitutional and statutory violations, irregularities, and malpractices in several areas. And it is those that have brought us to court today. And it is that reason that I'm testifying here today.
Now, Dr. Bawumia, can you explain to the court what a statement of poll and declaration of results form is? Otherwise known as the pink sheet.
Yes, my Lord. The statement of poll and declaration of results for the office of president form. Otherwise known as the pink sheet, is the primary record of the election at the polling station. It is the official record of the election at the polling station. My lords, it is the record on which basis the second respondent declared the results of the presidential election for December 2012.
Mr. Registrar, show it to the lawyers. Show it to the lawyers. Yes, show it to the witness. Now, can you identify the document you're holding?
Yes, my lords, this is the statement of poll and declaration of results for the office of president form.
Now, can you tell the court what is contained on that paper?
My lords, the paper, the pink sheet that I have in my possession right now has essentially 3 parts. There is the statement of poll, there is the result, and the declaration. And these 3 parts have to be internally consistent. To explain further, at the top of the form, you have the 3 identifiers of a polling station. This is the polling station name, the polling station code, and the serial number of the form. These identify the polling station that we are dealing with. The statement of poll, my lords, is in 4 parts. Part A deals with ballot information. This part of the form, my lords, has to be filled in by the presiding officer before the start of the poll. Has to be filled in before the start of the poll. This part has 2 questions that the presiding officer has to answer before the start of the poll. My lords, A1 asks the question, what is the number of ballots issued to this polling station? And A2 asks the question, what is the range of serial numbers of ballot papers issued to the polling station? My lords, Part B of the pink sheet contains information about the register and other lists at the polling station. B1 answers the question, what is the number of voters on the polling station register? B1, what is the number of voters on the polling station register? B2, my lords, asks the question, what is the number of voters on the proxy list? And B3 asks the question, what is the total number of voters eligible to vote at this polling station? This is B1 plus B2. My lords, Part C of the pink sheet deals with ballot accounting. Parts A and B have to be filled in before the poll begins. Part C, on the other hand, has to be filled in at the end of the poll, but before counting begins. My lord, it has to be filled in before counting begins as a check to possible vote manipulation. This is why it has to be done before you see the votes in the ballot box. My lords, Part C asks 6 questions. One is, what is the number of ballots issued to voters on the polling station register? Also, the number of people who have actually queued up to vote and have been issued ballot papers are the people who are recorded in this section, Part C1. C2 asks the question, what is the number of ballots issued to voters on the proxy list? And C3 asks the question, what is the total number of ballots issued to voters verified by the use of Form 1C, but not by the use of the biometric verification device? My lords, Form 1C is essentially your voter's ID card. Because when you fill out the biometric registration, the bottom of that form, which is Form 1C, it is what is torn and then laminated and given to you as your voter's ID card. My Lord, so question C3 asks the question, what is the number of ballots issued to voters verified by the use of Form 1C, but not by the use of biometric verification device? So if you are allowed to vote without the verification, but just with your voter's ID card, this is where the record can be found. My Lord, C4 asks, what is the total number of spoiled ballots? And my Lord, I'll just add that spoiled ballots don't get into the ballot box. Spoiled ballots, if the voter has smudged the ballot or has changed their mind and wants a replacement ballot, I think the spoiled ballot is put in a separate envelope. It doesn't get into the ballot box, and the voter is issued another ballot. So C4 asks the question, what is the number of spoiled ballots? My Lords, C5 asks the question, what is the total number of unused ballots? And C6 asks the question, what is the total of C1 plus C2 plus C3 plus C4, which should equal A1 above? A1 is the total ballots issued to the polling station. This section is called the ballot accounting section. So we must be able to account for the ballots that have been issued to this polling station. My Lord, so if you have total ballots, you would have to account for them in the context of what has been used, what has been spoiled, and what has been unused practically. And if you cannot account for the ballots issued to the polling station, then there is something wrong. My Lords, Section D of the Statement of Poll, D is a rejected ballot report. A rejected ballot report. My Lords, this rejected ballot report is to be filled in at the end of the poll after counting is completed. It also has 6 questions. Question 1 asks about the number of ballots, the number of rejected ballot papers without the official mark or the polling station stamp. The polling station stamp is the signature of the second respondent, essentially, or for that polling station. If you find a ballot in the ballot box without the polling station stamp or signature of the second respondent on it, it will be rejected. Lords, the second question deals with the number of ballot papers rejected because the voter voted for more than one candidate. If the voter votes for more than one candidate, then that ballot will be rejected. Hello, the third question deals with the number of rejected ballot papers with writing marks by which the voter could be easily identified. This is a secret ballot, and so if there are marks by which a voter can be identified, the ballot will be rejected. Question 5 asks about the number of ballot papers rejected because it was unmarked. So if there is no mark or the ballot in the box is blank, then the ballot is rejected. My lords, question D5 asks about the number of ballot papers rejected because the choice of the voter could not be ascertained. So if the ballot paper shows that the voter has stamp printed and it straddles two candidates, then it's not clear which candidate the voter voted for, and therefore the ballot will be rejected. My lords, this is the first part of the form, which is the statement of poll, dealing with critical information about the ballots, the register, ballot accounting, and rejected ballots. My lords, the second part of the pink sheet is the polling station results. And here, the candidates for the election, in this case we had 8 candidates. The names are there, and the votes obtained. The votes obtained for each candidate in words and figures are written in. At the bottom of this are 3 boxes. A tallies the total valid votes, that is, the total votes that have been obtained by each of these candidates. That is the total valid votes for this polling station. Part B deals with the total rejected votes from D6 above. That is the rejected ballot report. My Lords, Part C provides information on the total votes in the ballot box. That is the total valid votes plus the rejected votes. And these are again in words and figures. My Lords, the final part of the pink sheet is the declaration. And it reads, "We, the undersigned, do hereby declare that the results shown above are a true and accurate account of the ballots in this polling station." My Lords, as the law of this country requires, the presiding officer is required to sign this pink sheet. The agents present are also required to sign, but they can refuse if they choose to and give reasons. This is the third part of the pink sheet. My Lord, all parts of the pink sheet are the official primary record of the election. It is the basis upon which the second respondent declares the result from an aggregate of all the pink sheets from all the polling stations in the country.
Now, Dr. Bawumia, having received these pink sheets and having examined them, did you make any findings?
Yes, my Lords. Our examination and analysis of the pink sheets, in our examination and analysis, we found a large number of constitutional and statutory violations, malpractices, and irregularities in the conduct of this election. And those violations, malpractices, and irregularities were found on the face of the pink sheets.
Can you tell the court what these violations, malpractices, and irregularities were?
Yes, my Lord. In our examination and analysis of the pink sheets, we found constitutional and statutory violations in the areas of overvoting, in voting without biometric verification, and in the presiding officer or their assistant not signing the results before declaration as required by law. We also found irregularities and violations in the areas of the large use of duplicate serial numbers on polling station forms and duplicate polling station codes. In our examination, we also found polling stations which we could not trace to the list of 26,002 polling stations provided by the second respondent for the conduct of the election. My lords, on the face of the pink sheet, we also found evidence of a bloated voters register. So these were the broad irregularities, the constitutional and statutory violations, malpractices that we found in our examination of the pink sheets.
Now, Dr. Bawumia, how many pink sheets did you examine?
We examined in total around 24,000 pink sheets.
Now, can you tell the court what you mean by overvoting?
Yes, my lords. Overvoting comes in two forms. Essentially, we have a principle of one man, one vote, as we have in the Constitution and the laws of Ghana. The two forms of overvoting. First, overvoting would arise if the total votes in the ballot box, as recorded on the face of the pink sheet, exceed the voters' register at the polling station as recorded on the face of the pink sheet. Secondly, overvoting would arise if the total votes in the ballot box, my lords, as recorded on the face of the pink sheet, exceed the total ballots issued to voters as recorded in section C1 and C2, voters, both including proxy voters. So the total votes in the ballot box, if they exceed the number of voters you have given ballots to vote, then there is overvoting. So if 100 people line up, and you issue them 100 ballots, and you count at the end of the day, and you find 150 ballots in the ballot box, then you have overvoting. And I must add, my lords, that this phenomenon of overvoting was one that the second respondent was very emphatic on before the election. The chairman of the second respondent made it very clear, and for good reason. Made it very clear, and for good reason, that if the ballots are counted at the end of the day, and it is found that even one ballot exceeds what was issued by voters verified to vote, the results of that polling station will be cancelled. This, my lords, was because if that happens, if even you have one ballot above what was issued, then the integrity of the entire voting process at that polling station is compromised. And yes, my lords, the second respondent not only made this clear, but actually put this into practice during the 2012 elections. I'll give two examples of this.
My Lord, I have to raise an objection which we have indicated in the affidavit we filed on the basis that this relates to material facts that have not been pleaded in the petition to enable us to answer. My Lord, we referred to specific paragraphs in the affidavit of the second petitioner, which relates to material facts that have not been pleaded in the petition or the amended petition to enable us to answer same, and therefore evidence, I would respectfully submit, cannot be laid on them. These refer, my lords, to paragraphs 28, and 31 of the affidavit sworn to by the second petitioner. My Lord, this was mentioned in paragraph 12 of our affidavit filed yesterday, my Lord.
My Lords, we support the objection. The material facts that form the basis of the petition were well outlined in the petition, in respect of which particulars had been sought and provided. This is so material that particulars, in fact, ought to have been pleaded first and particulars provided. Within the context of the kind of trial we have where everybody's asking for expedition and the short time spans that have been given to provide material, I think it ought to have been fair to have brought these material facts up front much earlier in the pleadings to allow us to do investigations on them in order to respond appropriately. That not having been done, we don't think that it should be sneaked in at the evidence stage. We strenuously object to it.
Your Lordships made it quite clear that in having recourse to affidavit evidence, you considered that the rules of evidence, and I believe the other rules governing trials, are applicable. Now, my Lords, in this case, the petitioners filed a petition, amended it again, and of course, with your leave, they are supposed to testify on the basis of the matters that they have pleaded. Now, my Lord, this is just a very basic rule of law, which is not a laughing matter, and which all of us in the practice of the law are very conversant with. If there is any interest in yet another amendment, of course, that should be brought in the proper way before your Lordships. But you cannot sneak in effectively an amendment to your case by your witness testifying about something that you've not pleaded. I believe that this is such an elementary rule of legal practice, and I believe your Lordships are operating in accordance with those basic rules.
My Lords, the witness had already testified that overvoting was one of the violations he discovered in examining the pink sheets. And if your Lordships have regard to the petition that we filed, ground 2, 1A, the particulars, it is stated clearly that the results as declared and recorded by the second respondent contained widespread instances of overvoting in flagrant breach of the fundamental constitutional principle of universal adult suffrage, to wit, one man, one vote. And then we proceed to give details of all these violations. What the witness has sought to do is only to give an example of this overvoting. That is not a material fact. It is evidence of overvoting. And respectfully, we do not plead evidence. We have already indicated that there is overvoting. We have given copious examples of this overvoting, which we are seeking to have annulled. And all the witness is doing is giving an example of this overvoting. It's all in evidence.
My Lord, we are not objecting to evidence on overvoting. We refer to paragraph 28, where they allege an annulment. They allege that an annulment took place in paragraph 28. This they have not pleaded, and the same applies to paragraph 31 of the first petitioner's affidavit. We are not saying they can't lead evidence on overvoting. If they are going to give evidence of annulment that they claim occurred, they should have pleaded it to enable us to answer. So it is the references to annulment in those two paragraphs that I've referred to, Your Lordships, which we mentioned in paragraph 12 of our affidavit, that we are saying these are material facts that have not been pleaded to enable us to reply thereto, and evidence cannot be laid on them. If they wish to amend to be able to do so, that is fine, but they cannot sneak it in this manner, my Lord.
People are talking. What's your problem? Yes, my Lord. All we are seeking to do is that we are seeking that these overvoting should be allowed, and all the witness was doing is giving an example that indeed this has been done previously by the second respondent. They suffer no disadvantage at all by this evidence. They will have the opportunity to cross-examine the witness on this matter. And therefore we are unable to understand the reason for this objection. It is not a surprise. We have indicated we are seeking an annulment of the overvote, and we are giving an example carried out by the second respondent itself, unless of course they are denying it. If that is the case, they will have the opportunity to cross-examine the witness. My Lord, I'm sorry, I wish to draw your attention to paragraph 30 of our affidavit, which I believe the witness alluded to in his evidence, which is a statement made by the chairman of the second respondent, where he clearly states that if there is an overvote, the results of that station will be annulled, which is what they did, and we are referring to it. I therefore do not see what the prejudices that they are seeking to have reversed.
Yes, earlier in your address, you referred to ground 2-1 something of your agreement.
Ground 2-1A.
Of your amended petition.
That is so, my Lord.
My Lord, I have ground 2-1A. There's nothing about annulment in ground 2-1A. There is no mention about any annulment in ground 2-1A. And that is the objection we are raising, my Lord. They have talked about overvoting, yes. But as to specific instances where they allege that an annulment took place, nothing in their petition alleges that to enable us to answer in the pleadings. That is the point we are making.
The objection keeps shifting. First, I thought the objection was about overvoting. Now it is about annulment. If your Lordship has regard to paragraph 21 of our amended petition, we say there clearly, petitioners contend that these 4,670,504 votes have been rendered invalid by reason of the above violations and irregularities, and accordingly ought to be annulled, which is what we are seeking to do in this court. It's clearly stated there that we are seeking to have these votes annulled.
That's ground 2-1A. Are you referring to ground 2-1A?
I'm sorry?
Are you referring to ground 2-1A of your petition?
I'm referring to 21.
21.
That is so. Of the amended petition.
Of the amended petition.
Yes. Ground 2-1A and 21, where it talks about the annulment.
Yes, okay.
Court is taking a short break. All rise.
duplicating the evidence.
My Lord, we take the cue from the bench. The witness will take notice that you make reference to your affidavit so we can move on.
Yes.
My Lord, in this regard, will he be given permission to make reference to his affidavit to assist him in?
For sure.
Yes. The affidavit. Now, Dr. Bawumia, at any time, if you would like to refresh your memory, you seek permission from the court. Now, Dr. Bawumia, your findings relating to overvoting, would it have any effect on the declared results of the 2012 elections?
Yes, my lords. Our findings with respect to overvoting clearly will mean that the results announced by the second respondent would not hold. None of the two major candidates, if the votes from the polling stations where overvoting took place are annulled, would obtain a 50 plus 1%. In fact, the first respondent, my lords, if I may refer to my tables for accuracy, would obtain, if the votes for overvoting was annulled in those polling stations, the first respondent would obtain 49.37%, and the first petitioner would have 49.10%. None of the two would cross 50 plus 1 solely on overvoting alone as a violation.
Dr. Bawumia, what would you like the court to do in relation to the votes relating to overvoting?
My lords, the 1,826 polling stations, totaling 791,423 votes. My lords, for the 1,826 polling stations, totaling 791,423 votes, we would like the court to annul the votes because they are illegal.
Now, can you explain to the court what you mean by voting without biometric verification?
Yes, my lords. The law requires that every voter shall go through a process of biometric verification. This means that the fingerprints of the voter, which were taken during the registration period, have to be authenticated at the time of voting. So, with the fingerprint verification machines, the biometric verification machines. Biometric verification, my lords, is a critical issue in the 2012 election. It was hotly debated, and a law was passed to require it. The chairman of the second respondent, 2 days before the election, held a press conference. And made it very clear, my lords, that in any polling station where voting without biometric verification took place during this election, the results of that polling station will be cancelled. And he
now, Dr. Bawumia, how were you able to find out the people who voted without biometric verification?
My lords, the evidence is on the face of the pink sheet. Section C3 of the pink sheet asks the question: how many voters voted with the use of Form 1C, were verified, were to vote by the use of Form 1C, but not by the biometric verification device. So that is filled in section C3. And so, my lords, what we did was to aggregate for each polling station where voting without biometric verification took place. We aggregated all the numbers in section 3C, 63, C3. And my lords, if I may refer to my tables, we have a total of 535,723 people who were voted without biometric verification in the polling stations under contention. 535,723 people.
I want to show the witness a copy of the pink sheet. Now, can you tell the court what you're holding in your hand?
I'm holding in my hand a copy of the pink sheet for Bekwai Experimental JHS polling station.
Is it one of the exhibits you have filed in this matter?
Yes, it is. Exhibit MB M00005. 000005, yes.
Now, can you tell the court what you tendered this exhibit for?
This is an example of voting without biometric verification. In section C3 of this pink sheet, you'd see the number 294. In answer to the question, what is the number of ballots issued to voters verified by the use of Form 1C, but not by the use of the biometric verification device?
Was that filled in?
Yes, it was filled in, my lords. The number was 294 out of the 375 voters who were issued ballots. The exhibit number is 000005. MB, my lord, sorry. Exhibit number MB M000005. It's 5 zeros, my lord. MBM series. MBM series, my lord, yes. This is 000005.
Now, Dr. Bawumia, what did you find in your examination of the pink sheets relating to voting without biometric verification?
My lords, we found that for the polling stations that we are contesting, in 2,240 polling stations, voting without biometric verification took place. 2,240. With a total votes in those polling stations amounting to 856,172. 856,172.
Would these findings have any effect on the declared results?
Yes, my lord, they will have a material effect on the declared results, because for the two main contenders, the first respondent, if the votes at these polling stations were annulled, just
this 856172.
856,172.
Okay. Does it represent the number of voters who voted without biometric verification, or the number of registered voters in the polling stations?
Is the number of total votes at that polling station for each of the candidates. But that is different from the number of voters who voted without biometric verification, because it's not, you can have 700 people voting, but only 200 of them voted without biometric verification. So if you wanted the number of people who voted without biometric verification, it would be 200. But if you wanted the total number of votes in that polling station, then it would be 700. So the number of people who voted without biometric verification, as I said earlier on, for all of these polling stations is 535,723. but the total votes affected at those polling stations is 856,172.
So it is your contention that even those who voted after biometric verification, because others voted without biometric verification, their votes should also be annulled?
Precisely, my Lord. This is exactly what the chairman of the second respondent made it very clear on his press conference of December 5th. My Lord, he said, no verification, no vote. And if even one person voted without biometric verification at that polling station, it will be cancelled. That is what he said. And indeed, in several polling stations, votes were annulled in this election by the second respondent, Bulgona in Gambaga Nalergo constituency. One vote by a person without biometric verification, the whole polling station results were annulled. Other similar constituencies, Bongne in Gambaga Nalergo, similarly in Langbinsi police station, Bongne in Gambaga Nalergo, Nanyeri in Gambaga Nalergo, Bongne in Gambaga Nalergo, Bulgona in Gambaga Nalergo. They were all annulled because one or two votes were because of non-biometric registration, non-biometric verification. Thank you.
Now, Dr. Bawumia, what would you like the court to do with the votes relating to voting without biometric verification?
My Lord, the court, we will pray that the court announce these results, because the second respondent in this election cannot apply one set of rules to one set of polling stations and a different set of rules to a different set of polling stations. It has to be equitable in the interest of justice, in the interest of fairness, and in the interest of non-discrimination. We pray the court that we have equal treatment by the second respondent for all polling stations where voting without biometric verification took place.
Now, Dr. Bawumia, can you tell the court about the pink sheets with no presiding officer or assistant's signature?
Yes, my lords. In our examination of the pink sheets, we found that in 1,739 polling stations, the presiding officer or their assistant did not sign the pink sheet.
Show it to the lawyers. Can you tell the court what you discovered in your analysis of the pink sheets in relation to those that were not signed by the presiding officer?
we discovered that the total number of votes for the candidates in these polling stations totaled 705,305. 705,305.
Dr. Bawumia, let me take you back to the voting without biometric verification. Will your findings have any effect on the declared results of the 2012 elections?
Yes, my lords. The findings would have a material effect. If you annul the votes for this violation of the law, the first respondent would have votes of 49.16%, and the the first petitioner would have 49.34%. On the basis of biometric verification alone, voting without it, none of the two candidates would reach 50 plus 1%. And so we have a material impact on the results.
Now, where is it? Now, can you tell the court what you have in your hand?
I have in my hand, my lords, a copy of a pink sheet of Bepwase Community Center in Prestea, Honey Valley. The exhibit number is MBQ 000744.
Can you tell the court why you have tendered this exhibit?
This exhibit is an example of the violation of the law in these polling stations with regard to the absence of a signature of the presiding officer or their assistant.
Now, can you tell the court the exhibit numbers for those pink sheets relating to pink sheets without no presiding officer's signature or assistant's signature? They relate to what series?
They relate to primarily the MBQ series. MBQ series, but they are also in the MBO series, MBZ series, MBN series, MBK series, MBJ series, MBG series, MBF series, and MBS series, if I have not mentioned it, MBS series.
Now, Dr. Bawumia, with your findings on the pink sheets without presiding officer's signature have any impact on the declared results of the 2012 elections?
Yes, my lords. We found that in the 1,739 polling stations, the total number of votes in these polling stations where the law was violated amounted to 705,305. If these votes are annulled, as we pray, the court, the first respondent will have total votes of 49.52%, and the first petitioner will have total votes of 48.96%. So here again, my lords, none of the two candidates would attain 50 plus 1% on the basis of just this violation of the law of no signatures. You would have a major difference in the results announced by the second respondent.
Now, can you explain to the court what you mean by same serial numbers on the pink sheets for different polling stations?
Yes, my lord. The serial number, as we described on the pink sheet, comes pre-embossed on the pink sheet. The serial number for the polling station or the pink sheet is really no different from other serial numbers on documents and instruments such as checks or currency notes, for example. These are important elements identifying the polling station. We found, my lords, in our examination of pink sheets, contrary to the expectation that you will have a unique serial number for every polling station, we found different polling stations sharing the same serial number.
What is it?
On the surface, my lord,
go on.
On the surface, this might look very innocuous, but after examination of the pink sheets, it is clear, as I would explain later on, that the use of duplicate serial numbers was a major vehicle for the perpetuation of the constitutional and statutory violations of the law, irregularities, and malpractices in this election.
Now, can you tell the court what you found in your analysis of pink sheets with same serial numbers?
In our analysis, my lords, we found that there were 9,921 polling stations where pink sheets had the same serial numbers. The total number of votes, I'll repeat again, there were 9,921 polling stations where pink sheets had the same numbers. The total number of votes in these polling stations amounted to 3,924,844. My lords, it is important that we recognize, as we showed on the pink sheet, that the serial number on the pink sheet is the only identifier of the pink sheet that comes already embossed on the pink sheet. It is the only element at the right-hand corner of the pink sheet that comes pre-embossed. The other identifiers of the pink sheet are written in by hand. The presiding officer writes in the polling station name and writes in the polling station code. You can sit at home, have a pink sheet, and write these ones in. But you cannot sit at home and emboss a serial number onto the pink sheet. And this is what is very important to note about the serial number.
You have been given 2 sheets. Can you identify what sheets they are?
Yes, my lord. There are 2 sheets which have duplicate serial numbers from 2 different polling stations. I think these come from the Ho West constituency.
Exhibit number.
The exhibit numbers are MBP 005569. MBP 005569, and this is temporary booth Siamakope polling station. Temporary booth Siamakope polling station. And the second polling station is got exhibit number MBH 000745. MBH 000745. This is EP Primary School in Chito.
Can you tell the court why these 2 exhibits were tendered?
This is to explain the tender to give an example, because both share the same serial number 0007977, and this is an example of that.
Now, Dr. Bawumia, you have told this court that the incidence of same serial numbers seems to have been the vehicle for the commission of other violations and irregularities. Can you tell the court the impact this has had on each of the other violations?
Yes, my lord. We found out during the analysis, my lord. During our analysis, we found out that if you look at all the cases of overvoting that we have presented, all the cases of overvoting, this violation of the law that we have presented, in 74% of these situations, they occurred with the use of pink sheets which had duplicate serial numbers. In 74% of all cases of overvoting, they were using pink sheets with duplicate serial numbers. Interestingly, also with voting in 74%, the same percentage of polling stations, of the 2,240 polling stations where voting without biometric verification took place. In 74% of these polling stations, the pink sheets also had duplicate serial numbers. My lords, that is not the end of the story. When we move on to the constitutional and statutory violation of no signatures, we find that in 75% of the polling stations where we had no signatures, the pink sheets had no signatures, in 75% of these polling stations, you had the use of duplicate serial numbers. And then, my lords, in the case of duplicate polling station codes, we found that in 80% of the case circumstances where duplicate polling station codes were used, with one polling station having more than one set of results, you also had the use of duplicate serial numbers. The use of duplicate serial numbers, we contend, was a vehicle to operationalize the constitutional and statutory violations, malpractices, and irregularities that we have presented as evidence.
Now, Dr. Bawumia, would your findings on the same serial numbers for different polling stations have any effect on the declared results?
Yes, my lord. For the 9,921 polling stations, the total votes there are 3,924,844. 3,924,844. We are asking that, should these votes be annulled, the election is overturned, just on this category alone. The first respondent will end up with 41.96%, and the first petitioner will end up with 56.65%. On the basis of this alone, yes, the first respondent would end up with 41.96%, and the first petitioner will end up with 56.65% on the basis of this category alone.
Dr. Bawumia, what would you like the court to do with respect to votes relating to same serial numbers for different polling stations?
My lords, we are praying that this vehicle that was used pervasively in these polling stations, that the votes in these polling stations as a result of duplicate serial numbers be annulled.
Now, Dr. Dr. Bawumia, apart from same serial numbers for different polling stations, you also talked about same polling station codes for different polling stations. Can you explain that?
Yes, my lords. One expects, and in fact the second respondent admits, that we should have one polling station code for every polling station. In our analysis of the pink sheets, however, we found the case of the same polling station sharing different polling station codes. And this is
This is the first time I'm hearing that there is a problem with one polling station sharing different codes. That's not a problem. Yeah? Unless you want to clarify, unless I didn't hear, that one polling station sharing different codes. I've never heard that allegation before.
No, maybe I should clarify.
Maybe you should.
It is.
Maybe you should, yeah.
Thank you, Counsel. It is the same polling station with different sets of results, different sets of pink sheets, right? Different sets of pink sheets for the same polling station. So you have the same polling station code for different sets of results for that same polling station. We found a situation where you had the same polling station having more than one pink sheet. Having more than one pink sheet.
Dr. Bawumia, can you please identify the sheets you have in your hands?
Yes, my lords. These are copies of the pink sheets for Joasu Court Hall polling station. This is from the MB series, MBY 00001, 5 zeros, MBY 00001, then MBY and MBT. These are 3 sets of polling station results for one polling station, the same polling station, with 2 different presiding officers. And the presiding officer's signatures are different. The same presiding officer had different signatures.
Now, Dr. Bawumia, what would you like the court to do with respect to votes relating to same polling station codes?
Well, my lords, we will ask that these votes be annulled. Or at least, to the extent that these all featured on collation sheets, they should be annulled.
Now, Dr. Bawumia, you mentioned earlier on that voting took place in certain locations which were not part of the 26,002 polling stations supplied to the New Patriotic Party. Can you tell the court which locations you are referring to?
My lords, in our examination of the pink sheets, we found that we could not locate from the list of 26,002 polling stations 23 pink sheets that we had. The codes did not match.
I think the mention of 23, I think is clearly wrong and should not be admissible. Because, in fact, when the petitioners were ordered to provide particulars of the affected polling stations, they managed to provide only 22. My understanding, therefore, and in fact the court ordered that they should restrict the evidence to 22 polling stations. To the extent that is mentioned 23, I think it's completely inadmissible and can lead evidence to respect of 22.
That in the pleadings it was alleged that there were 28 such non-existent polling stations. But in the sitting we had on the 2nd of April, Mr. Addison admitted that they could only put forward 22, and that was recorded, and our request for further and better particulars was taken to have lapsed as regards the shortfall of 6. And this is on record, my Lord, that Mr. Addison stated that only 22 is what they were alleging. So we support the objection.
My Lord, my simple response to this objection is that we provide details for 23 locations. I'm sorry.
My lords, it was counsel for the petitioners. It was counsel for the petitioners who said in open court that he was going to abide by the number of polling stations in respect of which further and better particulars had been provided. Now, if there is going to be evidence given about more than that, then we would respectfully require that further and better particulars should be provided in respect of whatever additional, because it was on the basis of counsel saying at the bar to your lordships that he was going to abide by the 22. It was on that basis that your lordships made the ruling. So if they are going to provide further and better particulars as had been requested by the EC, the second respondent, for the additional ones, then of course we can have the evidence that they're leading, if they're going to provide the further and better particulars as we had requested.
My Lord, the original allegation of the petitioners were that there were 28 locations. Upon the order that we provide further and better particulars, we provided particulars in respect of 23. In respect of 23, the respondents have in their possession particulars in respect of 23 locations. That's exactly what I said, that we will limit ourselves to how much we have been able to provide by way of particulars.
To the 22 that they were, yes.
My Lord, I said so because there was one volume in which there were 22 locations.
Yes, and the court order was actually based upon what you admitted.
My Lord, but we have supplied information for the 23. It was also with them. We had supplied information on the 23.
You should have been sure that you have supplied the information on 23 instead of the 22 that you admitted. So you can't go back on your word.
Well, my Lord, we will not belabor it, except that the 23 is also with them. We have provided evidence for 23, but we will not belabor it. If it's 22, we will go on with 22.
Yes, and then we move on.
Very well. So, Dr. Bawumia, we'll limit ourselves to 22 locations.
Just for the record, we did not receive details of 23 locations. We received details of 22. My Lord, it's just for the record. The allegation that we had 23 instead of 22 is incorrect, and it cannot go unanswered. As if we are being dishonest. We are not being dishonest. We received 22, based on which the order was made. And I must say that, the orders of this court are fairly sacrosanct. And if the orders are made, we don't waste time like this going back to matters that have already been determined.
Well, my lords, Since my learned friend is on the issue of records, the records should reflect that we indeed provided particulars for 23 locations. Does he dispute it? But he was talking about records.
We haven't said that. Agreed that you limit 20.
We have
Let's
agreed.
not go backwards, please. Let's go forward. Let's go forward with the evidence.
Dr. Bawumia, limit yourself to the 22 locations.
Thank you very much. My lords, for the 22 locations, we could not find them on the list of 26,002. We couldn't match the names and the polling station codes. Again, as with the duplicate numbers category, my lords, we have to be upfront. Statistically, this category is insignificant. Statistically. 99% of all the irregularities, violations that we are talking about are in 4 categories. Overvoting, voting without biometric verification, the duplicate serial numbers, and the no signatures. These are where the bulk of the irregularities are. But the occurrence of voting in places without where the second respondent hasn't provided us should not really happen, even if it is one polling station. It should not happen.
Now, Dr. Bawumia, it has been alleged that your analysis involves double counting. How do you respond to that?
I'm not. The analysis in no way involves double count.
Hold on. You are summing up the principal violations, and you mentioned overvoting, voting without biometric verification, same serial numbers,
and no signature by the presiding officer.
Yes, yes.
Now, can you tell the court whether your analysis involves double counting?
Definitely not. In each of these categories on their own have their own story to tell. But when you look at the violations, the constitutional and statutory violations, malpractices and irregularities, my lords, one would find that the violations occurred in multiples. In other words, there were very few polling stations where you only had one violation. For example, if you look at the overvoting category, you had in 15% of cases of overvoting where overvoting was the only infraction. But in 85% of cases, you had overvoting with voting without biometric verification or with no signature or with a duplicate serial number. So they were occurring in multiples, not just one violation. Statistically, the challenge is that if you try to add these together, you could run in the problem of double counting. And so, to deal with this, we had to make sure that the categories, because of the intersections of the different irregularities, violations, and malpractices, one had to make sure that the various categories of infractions were mutually exclusive, and no polling station would fall into more than one category. In this regard, my lords, we have 24 mutually exclusive categories to avoid this particular problem. And this is how we have avoided it. And these are basically in the various exhibits and the exhibit series, the 24 series, the 24 categories, so that you don't have more than a pink sheet falling into more than one category, and then you avoid the problem of double count.
Now, can you also explain to the court how you calculated the votes that you are seeking to be annulled?
My lords, at each polling station where an irregularity occurred, or violation of the law or malpractice occurred, the total number of votes for each candidate is tallied. And for all the polling stations in contention, the total number of votes attained by each candidate is added up. And this total is subtracted from the total declared by the second respondent for that particular candidate. And the net result is found.
Now, Dr. Bawumia, can you tell the court how widespread these violations, malpractices, and irregularities were?
Yes, my lord. They were very widespread across the country, touching virtually every region and most constituencies. And so the different regions, I think, had different impacts. You had in Greater Accra, in terms of numbers, for example, having the largest numbers, followed by Volta, Western and Central regions, where the impact was high. But every region, you had all of these irregularities. But in terms relative to the voters' register, then you had Upper West, Upper East, Volta, Northern, Greater Accra being more in the lead. But they were very widespread.
Can you tell the court what you found out about the voters' register?
My lords, our examination of the pink sheets revealed that the polling station voters register recorded in section B1 of the pink sheets was quite inconsistent with the voters register presented by the second respondent for the conduct of this election.
I would like the witness perhaps to clarify this, because it is a new matter. We have not come across voters' registers in the pink sheets. There's nothing in the pleadings to that effect, my lord. The pink sheets mention the number of voters in the particular polling station. That is all.
Yes.
Only my learned friend had been a bit patient, he would have understood where the witness is going to. We have been supplied with further and better particulars by the second respondent in respect of the voters register when we raised an issue of 241,000 difference in the register. It's all in the record, and that is what we are alluding to. Can you go ahead?
Yes, my lords. The voters register is provided by the second respondent. The figures for the voters register has kept changing, and we've really, for us to date, not been able to pin down exactly what the figure for the voters register that was used in the conduct of this election was. My lords, the second respondent provided the MPP with a voters register of 14,031,680. 14,031,680. This was the figure that we entered the election with. On the day the chairman of the second respondent declared the election results, my lord, those results were declared with a voters register figure of 14,158,890. A difference of 127,210. This was a surprise. My lords, this was the reason why we, in the context of further interrogatories, we requested the explanation for this figure, which, as I said, was a surprise. In their response, my lords, the second respondent said that initially they had a figure of 13,917,366. But after the registration of foreign voters or people based abroad, students, peacekeepers, diplomatic missions, and so on, this figure jumped from 13,917,366 to 14,158,890. My lords, this was a difference of 241,524. We asked for a production of the names and biodata of these 241,524. The second respondent had provided us 2,883 names, 705 of which were supposed to be for diplomatic missions. 705. My lords, In our examination of these 705 names, my lords, in our examination of these 705 names, we found 51 duplicate names in that list, total of 102 names. Same names, same ages, same, everything was the same except the voter ID number. My lords, further analysis of these names indicated that there was a pattern to these names. These names had every similarity except the voter ID numbers. When we checked the voter ID numbers on the voters register that the second respondent provided, we could not find these voter IDs. My lords, they were fake. My lords, what is even more disturbing is that the voter ID numbers, these fake voter ID numbers, had a particular pattern. You would see one ID number for one name, then it will be at, say, number 11. The second name will be placed at number 524. If you are not vigilant, you will not know that it is the same name you've come across. But the pattern of the generation of these fake voter ID numbers was quite interesting. The fifth digit of the voter ID number, you add or subtract 1 from it. And the last digit, you subtract 2 from it. This was the pattern. This was the mathematical formula. For these 51 names. My lords, the second respondent in their affidavit filed yesterday claims that this was an error. And one of the names were twins. My lords, it is difficult to envisage an algorithm that essentially duplicates a record, but in the duplication of that record changes it in exactly the same pattern. Exactly the same pattern.
Very well. Very well. Yes.
My lords, we have not yet had a satisfactory response to the 241,524 names that we asked for from the second respondent.
Now, Dr. Bawumia, did the NPP have polling agents at the various polling stations?
Yes, my lord. The NPP had polling agents at the various polling stations.
Did these agents sign some of these pink sheets you have referred to in this court?
Yes, my lord. Some of the pink sheets were signed by our agents. Some were not signed by our agents, but most were signed by our agents.
It is said that you cannot complain about these pink sheets since they were signed by your agents. What do you have to say to that?
Well, our agents signing a pink sheet cannot really waive what is legally required. If your watchman sits aside while they steal something of yours, you cannot really say that.
Counsel, is this evidence?
Dr. Bawumia, you heard the president. Please stick to the pink sheets.
Yes, my lords. Our agents signed basically the pink sheet to affirm that what happened at the polling station they were witnesses to. Our agents did not sign to say that what happened was free or fair, but they attested to what happened at the polling station. My lord, our agents were observers. They did not fill the pink sheets. They did not man the biometric verification devices. They did not print the pink sheets with duplicate serial numbers. So our agents did the best they could. But the irregularities, the violations of the law, the malpractices cannot be swept aside because our agents signed the forms.
Now, Dr. Bawumia, I'd like to draw your attention to the answer
At this stage, counsel,
filed by the second respondent. I'm sorry.
I think we've entered into a different phase altogether of the testimony. Probably at a certain stage, I thought he should rather be there. He should be at the bar and not in the witness box. These arguments. Let them stick to hard facts. When it comes to addresses, you analyze, show the legal effect and all that. But,
Very well.
Yes.
We're moving to the answer by the second respondent, Electoral Commission. Now, by paragraph 6 and 8 of the amended answer by the second respondent, it says that the figure of 14,031,793 registered voters was what was used in printing the final voters register, and copies of this were given to the political parties. And that following directives from the court in respect of challenges and objections during the exhibition of the provisional voters register, the number was reduced to 14,031,680. What do you have to say to this?
Well, my lords, I cannot speak for other political parties, but for the MPP, we received a voters register with a figure of 14,031,680, and this was received between November 21st in 3 batches, and the first few days, maybe around December 2nd.
Now, again, in paragraph 6, the second respondent says the figure of 14,158,890, which was announced in the declaration of the results of the presidential election on 9 December 2012, was picked in error. What do you have to say to that?
My lords, it looks like every irregularity, every violation, every malpractice is supposed to be an error, except the declaration of the results, where no errors were made. The figure, my lords, of 14,158,890, announced by the chairman of the second respondent, was not really in the public domain. One doesn't really know where it was picked from to be announced. And so we have seen different figures. As I said, 40,158,890, 40,031,793, and 40,031,680 for this presidential election. And what he announced was different from what he gazetted the parliamentary results with, which was 40,031,680.
Now, by paragraph 9, the second respondent says that the NPP and NDC were the first to receive the final voters register as from 21st November 2012. What do you have to say to that?
Well, as I said earlier, I cannot speak for the other parties, but for the NPP, we received this voters register in batches between November 21st and about the 2nd of December. 3 batches.
In paragraph 11, the second respondent says that the total number of registered voters was the same for the parliamentary as for the presidential elections. What is your response to this?
Well, my lords, what the second respondent announced was 40,158,890 for the presidential election. And for the parliamentary election, they announced 40,031,680. This is what was gazetted. That is the difference of 127,210. My lords, the position is compounded when you examine the pink sheets themselves. Because in the pink sheets, my lords, you have section B1. Section B1 asks the question, what is the total number of voters on the polling station register? My lords, for the polling stations in contention, we added all the B1s for all the pink sheets to see what the voters registered used at the polling stations on the day of the election was like compared to the voters register that the EC had provided as 14,031,680. So we compared these two sources of data for the same voters register. My lords,
the witness is referring to a piece of paper that we will need to have provided to us because I think, again, the rules are very clear that if he's using some paper to refresh his memory, we do need to have that available and properly put in evidence. It's obvious that he's pulled out a sheet of paper which is not... Well, I mean, I think if your lordships, I didn't believe that I needed to refer to section 77 of the evidence decree, but if it is necessary, I can refer to that section. If a witness, either while or before testifying, uses a writing to refresh his memory with respect to any matter about which he testifies, the testimony on that matter shall be excluded if the writing is not produced at the trial, unless the court in its discretion allows the testimony to stand. So we're asking for that to be produced.
Well, I don't know. Yes. Let me see. My lord, I don't know what document it is. I would like to see the document. Is it not in the paper?
It's a
but why? Why?
My lords, we've had a look at it. We think it should be tendered. If he was referring to it, it should be tendered. He had been testifying with figures for an extended period now. And if he had been referring to that, then it should be in evidence. Because what is in evidence is found in the...
It is already in evidence. Yes, give it to him. Give it to the witness.
It's just an updated table of what is in evidence.
My Lord, would like it to be tendered. That is so, my Lord. It should be tendered, my Lord.
My Lord, it is already in evidence in the PowerPoint presentation and also in the... Is it there?
It's an updated table, actually. It's an updated table. So we should tender it.
Lord, with the greatest respect, the witness himself says it's an updated document.
Yes.
And my understanding of the English language suggests to me that it is different from what was in the PowerPoint presentation. He just repeated that it's an updated document. And it's only fair that we have copies of that. I mean, that is what the rules require.
My Lord, we have no problem giving them copies since he says it's an updated version. We will give them copies of it.
All right. Yes, yes. Refer to the period of the updating in relation to the last document of which this is updated.
We just finished this last night.
Okay. Right.
We finished this last night, my Lord.
Last night?
Yes, my Lord.
Can we get copies copies?
Well, I thought he was going to tender this in, and then
you bring us copies.
Yeah, so lead him to tender, and then.
Dr. Bawumia, what do you have in your hands?
I have in my hand an analysis of the voters' register by region.
By region?
And it looks at the EC voters' register for the different regions. This is a summary for each of the 10 regions of the data. The ballots issued on the pink sheet A1, section A1 of the pink sheets, and then the voters register recorded on section B1 of the pink sheets. And then the final column talks about what would be the case if you were issuing ballots of the registered voters plus 10%. So this is what the table entails. It's an update of another table that was in the affidavit.
What would you like to do with this document?
My Lords, I would like to tender it in evidence.
Exhibit A. Exhibit A. What's that? Copies. It needs to answer questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Baumia, you can now go on. Tell us what is on the Exhibit A.
My Lords, Exhibit A deals with the analysis of voters by region. Relating to the voters register for the polling stations that are in contention. If you sum up the polling station voters register for each of these polling stations, you will get a total voters register of 6,762,882. 6,762,882. This is summing up the pink sheet, section B1 of the pink sheet, which gives us the figure for the voters register at the polling station. My Lords, one would expect that this figure should match the voters register supplied to us by the second respondent. But for each, when you look at the polling stations, for the same polling station, the Electoral Commission's voters register, the 40,031,680 version, has a total registered voters for these polling stations of 5,799,994. So you have a difference of about 960,000 between the registered voters, as you can see on the pink sheets, and the registered voters in the EC's voters register. And that really should not be the case. My Lord, when you look at the data, also because the second respondent says that they issue ballots to each polling station depending on the number of registered voters, my Lord. My Lords, so we looked at the ballots which were issued to each of these polling stations. The sum of the ballots issued to these polling stations amounted to 11,511,207. 11,511,207. At the same time, the EC's voters register, as I said, was 5,799,994. If the EC was issuing ballots to these voters on the basis of its own rule of 10% more than the voters register, the total ballots issued should have been 6,385,058. That is 10% above the 5.7 million figure. What we found, my lords, however, was that they issued ballots of 11,511,207, which is 98% more. 98% more than the 10% that they have said they are going to issue. 98%. So you are having a situation where the pink sheets are saying that you have almost 1 million voters in half the polling stations, and you are issuing 98% more ballots than what is required.
I know with respect, we think this is an appropriate place for us to take a break. The witnesses. We're tired. I've been standing 3 hours. I'm sorry?
Do you have a long way to go?
My Lord, yes, we are now on the second respondent. Afterwards, we will come to the first and third. So, tomorrow we'll finish. So they can come prepared for tomorrow. We'll tell him he should sit down.
has done a lot that has been hidden from the public. When you look,
I'm sorry? Yes, go on.
Yeah.
My Lord says that you should state facts and not comments.
The facts are that when the second respondent tried to get signatories for pink sheets after we had submitted to the second respondent our further and better particulars in Savunugu and where the officials were arrested, that was not in public.
Objection. But I do not understand. The witness is referring to matters that are outside the pleadings. I don't know. When the second respondent tried to get signatures?
Yes.
My Lord, this is out of order. Out of order.
Yes, Addison, was this pleaded anyway? It's in some affidavits, but I mean.
My Lord, this is evidence that is relevant to the matters at hand. We are talking about signatures, and the issue of signatures happening after the elections, way after the elections, are matters that this court should take judicial notice of. And this is what the witness is bringing to the notice of the party. The second respondent themselves.
Dimension altogether. They say there are no signatures that can be established in its own right. If another complexion of it, which is of a different dimension altogether, then it has to be pleaded, because this type of allegation is not a simple one.
My Lord, the second respondent itself has said that they were having signatures well after the elections at the collation centers. It's an evidence. They themselves in their pleadings say that they signed these forms at the collation center.
Refer to the pleadings where this is captured. And then,
which one? The answer? My Lord, paragraph 17 of second respondent's amended answer to the second amended petition.
Second
respondent's amended answer to the second amended petition filed on 27 February 2013.
Yes, can you read it out?
Yes. Says the second respondent denies paragraph F of ground 1 of the second amended petition and says that upon being served with the further and better particulars provided by the petitioners following the orders of this honorable court dated February 5 and 7, 2013, it conducted an examination and analysis which showed that of the 2009 pink sheets that the petitioners claimed to be unsigned, 1,099 were in fact signed by the presiding officer at the polling station or at the instance of the returning officer at the collation center. 905 were unsigned, representing 3.5% of the total number of pink sheets nationwide, and 1,989 pink sheets, representing 99% of the number claimed to be unsigned, were signed by the polling or counting agents of the candidates. So, my Lord, clearly, there is admission that signings went on after elections.
Now which part of what you have read shows that there was post-voting signature? I don't get that from what you have read. But if you can indicate it.
My Lord, The law says that the signing should be done at the polling station. Any signing outside
that one. What you are trying to say that there's a pleading to the effect that some signing took place post the collation and all that. And that's
we have not said post collation. We said signage took place post the election. After the election at the polling station.
Yes.
Which is in violation of the law.
What is the election? You know, the collation and the pink sheets and so forth. So, I mean, but what we're asking for from you is very simple. We are saying that, you are saying that after the whole exercise, some kind of supplementary signature took place. Our understanding is that this took place after the closure of the electoral process. And that's why they are objecting to. But you are saying that there's a pleading to that effect. So we want to be clear that there is that there.
Well, my Lord, the issue is relevancy.
After the election. That's what Mr. Addison said. And what he has quoted is something that we refer to as having stated occurred in the collation center. That is during the election. At the collation center. This was during the election.
My Lord, I'd like to refer your lordships to the Evidence Act, Section 51(1), relating to relevancy. It says, for the purposes of this Act, relevant evidence means evidence including evidence relevant to the credibility of a witness or hearsay declarant, which makes the existence of any fact that is of consequence to the determination of the action more or less probable than it would be without the evidence. 2, all relevant evidence is admissible except as otherwise provided by any enactment. My Lord, this is where we're coming, that all relevant evidence.
You see, that's not... if you want to go by that literally, then pleadings will have no place at all.
Well, my Lord,
yes.
There is an issue relating to signatures on these pink sheets and when they were signed. Clearly, when this petition was brought, this was made an issue. The evidence before the court suggests that there has been tampering because these forms were supposed to be signed at the polling station. That is what the law says. Now a party comes to this court to say, no, we signed some of these forms after the polls.
Respectfully, when you start talking about tampering, you're making allegations of crime. I think it must be pleaded.
Mr. Lisa, I have not finished my submissions.
Haven't you? Well, I'll ask because I mean this has collateral effect on the case. So I'd like the opportunity to respond.
Yes.
And my Lord, this pattern of tampering with official records has continued up to now, and we're seeking to give evidence of that. And we're saying that the court itself can take judicial notice of this fact because it's a notorious fact.
Look at Section 9 of the evidence.
You have not satisfied any of the conditions for inviting the court to take judicial notice. Look at Section 9.
Well,
you haven't satisfied any of them.
We are leading evidence on that matter.
The person who made that allegation or who pleaded to that is the Electoral Commission. All that your client could have said is, yeah, I don't know what you expect him to say, to confirm or deny. Because if you see the declarant, so far as that allegation is concerned, statement is concerned, is the Electoral Commission, not him. For you to be quoting Section 51 in terms of
this is in their pleadings. This is in their pleadings. It's not so much an affidavit. It's their pleadings, which we are contesting. And that is why we are putting questions to contest.
So that, I approach Section 51 allows you to cross-examine the person who had made that pleading and show that he didn't speak the truth, but not your witness.
Well, my Lord, we will not press it. We will take a cue from the bench. We will not press it. Now, Dr. Bawumia, by paragraph 14, second respondent also says that agents had a right to ask for a recount of the votes or to refuse to sign the declaration form and give reasons for the refusal, but did not do so. What do you have to say to this?
My lords, as I have already stated, some of our agents signed, some of our agents did not sign. Those who signed attested to what happened at the polling stations, including the irregularities. They are not signing doesn't make what was illegal, or they are signing doesn't make what was illegal legal.
The witness is addressing the court. He should give evidence, my lord. I object.
Responding to your I don't know.
Can you go on?
Yes, very well. My lords, our agents were observers, and political parties and candidates don't even necessarily have to have agents. In their capacity as observers, the Electoral Commission conducted the election. They filled in the pink sheets, signed them or didn't sign them. They manned the biometric verification machines. They declared the results. And it is those irregularities that has brought us to court today. And so it is those irregularities that we are concerned about, and not the actions or inactions of our agents.
Now, by paragraph 15, the second respondent says that registered voters who were not successfully verified were turned away from the polling stations. And at about 400 polling stations in which the verification process faced challenges, slowness or malfunction of equipment on December 7, voting continued the following day. And therefore, in effect, nobody voted without being verified. What do you have to say to this?
My lords, this is not true. The evidence that we have on the face of the pink sheets shows quite clearly that over 500,000 people voted without biometric verification. The challenges of breakdowns in the biometric verification machines on the day of the election were clear for all to see. Even the first respondent had occasion on the day to make a public appeal that, contrary to the law, people should be allowed to vote without biometric verification. And so if you look at what actually transpired in places like Nadoli Kalio, where presiding officers were on air confirming that voting was taking place in their polling stations without biometric verification. In the face of all that evidence, it beggars belief that the second respondent who was in charge of conducting this election, would claim that nobody voted without biometric verification.
Yeah. Now, still at paragraph 15A, the second respondent says that upon being served with the further and better particulars and having examined same, it found that no voters were allowed to vote without verification at any polling station, and says that in a number of cases, question number C3 was mistakenly filled in because of the inexperience of some of the presiding officers, and also because this was the first occasion that biometric verification was being used in Ghana. What do you have to say to this?
My lords, this is difficult to believe, that presiding officers cannot fill a form, even after training, that says how many people voted without biometric verification. These are not isolated instances, my lord. This was a very widespread occurrence across the whole country. And in fact, the admission by the second respondent that this actually occurred, but rather wants to attribute it to errors or mistakes, I think only serves to make the case that those votes should in fact be invalid.
If, as the second respondent says, it was a mistake in filling question C3, is there any column on the pink sheet where those figures should have been put?
My lords, this is why I say it's difficult to believe. The pink sheets, C3, most of the pink sheets that we are contesting in this category, all of these pink sheets were filled. 294, as we saw in the case of Bekwai experimental GHS. People voted without biometric verification. Now, if it was an error, my lords, where did the presiding officers get that figure from? Which box on that pink sheet was supposed to receive that figure of 294?
Where the witness is now asking questions. Who is he asking the question of? That's why we said some of these things are better handled by you at the end of the matter, by way of address.
My lord, the point is taken. This is also the inexperience of the witness.
Don't you think that is also the way?
First time in the box. First time in the box.
The witness is responding to somebody's allegation. The witness is responding to allegations made by somebody.
Yes.
So if you just don't condemn him that he's inexperienced. It depends on how you frame your question.
No, my lord, the inexperience relates to his first time, not what he's saying. Now, Dr. Bawumia, by paragraph 15A again, the second respondent also says that the requirement of prior biometric verification was arrived at on the insistence of the NPP. What do you have to say to that?
My lord, the requirement for prior biometric verification is encapsulated in CI 75. And CI 75, my lord, my understanding, was passed at the instance of the second respondent and not by the NPP. In fact, the chairman of the second respondent made it a very cardinal issue in this election, and it is clear in the guide for materials for the officials elect for the 2012 that is printed by the second respondent, that this was an issue, and it is very clear that the second respondent made this a critical issue that we should all abide by. The chairman of the second respondent made the slogan, no verification, no vote. And this is what we all abided by in this election. So I think that that is not correct, that it was at the instance of the MPP, my lords.
Last, Dr. Bawumia, Again, in paragraph 15 of the second respondent's answer, it says that the Commonwealth Observer Group, in its report at page 36 on the Ghana 2012 presidential and parliamentary elections, made the following recommendation, unquote. The Electoral Commission should review the exceptions to the current practice on the use of the biometric verification device to minimize the number of elderly people being refused their vote due to the difficulty in matching fingerprints, unquote. What do you have to say to this?
My Lords, the report quoted of the Commonwealth Observer Group, I'm sure, was very well-meaning, but it is completely irrelevant as far as the matters before this court is concerned. The Commonwealth Observer Group was in no position really to observe many.
The witness giving evidence or addressing the court, my Lord, I object.
And that's what I was going to say.
My Lord, this is opinion that is given to the court, my Lord. No, we quoted it, my Lord.
So you shouldn't be responding to it.
We are just gathering the facts. Did that take place or it didn't take place? The effect of it, legal effect of it,
my Lord,
comes at the end.
Since we do not have a right to reply in written form, the only way we can traverse the pleadings is by putting it to our witness. That's the only way.
I'm not saying you don't have a right, but I'm saying that when he starts arguing, you know...
my Lord, it's because of the pleadings, the so-called pleadings, which are quoting reports from observer groups.
That's why I'm saying that the factual position is that this statement was made by the Commonwealth Observer Group. Was it made? It wasn't made? That is what is at issue. That's what's relevant now. As to its legal place and effect, it's not for the witness box. If he's denying the statement, that is what he can say now. The legal effect of it, it comes later.
They deny an averment in our petition, and in further to that denial. So this quotation is meant to support that denial. And we believe that we have a right to traverse it. And in this respect, I can refer your lordships to the Evidence Act, section 111, relating to opinion.
Yes.
Lay opinion. A witness not testifying as an expert may give testimony in the form of an opinion or inference only if A, the opinion or inference concerns matters perceived by the witness, and B, testimony in the form of an opinion or inference is helpful to the witness in giving a clear statement or is helpful to the court or tribunal of fact in determining any issue.
Well, I don't see how this advances what you are saying, honestly speaking. Honestly speaking.
My Lord, there are several of these in the pleadings.
Spend time on it by way of address. Even that pleading, which you describe as so-called pleading, it's not relevant to the issues before the court. Asking that something be revised is of no relevance to the issue whether or not there were irregularities.
Thank you, that is the answer we are soliciting.
Yeah, so you don't need to waste your time on this here and then get into disputation with the court over this.
My Lord, if we do not traverse it, it may be taken to mean we admit it. We do not know what the court was going to say.
It's not
that is why we are traversing it.
No. At least we are experienced. That's why we are this level.
The witness is dying.
My Lord the President, we pray that we end this matter here. The witness is exhausted. He's exhausted.
exhausted our questions.
I don't know upon what basis you've issued this certificate of exhaustion.
We'll take a cue from the bench. We'll shorten, and the next time we come here, and we'll finish quickly. We're taking a cue from that. So we'll also like him to have a look at the affidavits we served this morning, so we can run up tomorrow morning.
How many paragraphs are left there?
Lord, we are on paragraph 15.
Out of
24.
15 out of 24. Yeah. After all.
When you are putting forth the case of the respondents, there are some which are factual. Those the witness can respond to. Those that are legal, reserve them for your address. You understand?
Very well. Madam, we take a cue on that. Very well. Sit down, sit down.
April 2013 for continuation as tomorrow.
My Lord.
Yes.
Lord, we're going to make a humble suggestion.
Yes.
That perhaps your Lordship could give us an indication of the sitting times so that we could plan our day accordingly. That the court would sit from this time to this time, have a break, and then this time to that time. Then we could adjust our programs accordingly. And also, if there's going to be a lunch break, we could squeeze in a short lunch break so that we keep body and soul together.
Well, the hard and fast rules may be difficult. You make the applications as appropriate. I mean, we want to do as much as possible every day. We don't foresee ourselves going beyond 4 p.m. every day. So when you feel that you have to go and find something to eat, I've said we're human beings. Because, I mean, if we set time and we start, you see, the way the evidence goes, objections and all sorts of things, it's difficult to put times in place just like that. But as we go on, the exigencies of the matter, we can manage. We can manage. The appropriate stage, like he has applied now, and we have kind of assessed and accepted. But broadly speaking, I think from the happenings, you have an idea about our breaks, normally around 12. The one we have to give a ruling, that one I cannot foretell and tell you, you know, that incidence. But getting to 12, we normally take a short break. And then we come. And we try to do it up to maybe 4, but with another short break in between. This what we can.
Very well. On starting time, if we could get some indication.
We'll be starting at 10. That's our time.
Very well. Then, last point, my Lord, with your permission.
Yes.
Transcripts, if we could be given, in view of the rather detailed statistics that our eminent statistician has rattled off at some great speed.
Yes.
It would be very useful for us to have the transcripts, my Lord, so that if they could be dealt with expeditiously, similarly, we would be able to, proceed,
yes.
my Lord.
Okay, I think those are you see to that, for them, yeah, and for ourselves too. Yeah.